Greetings, citizens. Hey you beautiful, creepy human being you, and welcome to today's true crime episode. I am so happy that you are here. I'm so happy that somehow in all of this that we're forced to deal with on the day today, you and I were able to find each other on this crazy little planet that we call home. My name is Brittanee or BRATTERSTEIN, whichever you prefer, and today we're going to be discussing the murder of 69-year-old Nick Abraham, allegedly at the hands of famous TikToker, Mr. Prada. But before we get started, if you have not yet had the pleasure, please make sure to join the Brat Pack by subscribing and ringing that bell. I put out a new video every single week, sometimes 2 a week, and I would love to hang out with you. Yes, you specifically you, but I can only do that if you join the Brat Pack and become one of us. So with that, the case we're going to be discussing today. For some context, I'm a TikTok girly. I just am. It is a problem. Well, is it a problem if it brings you joy? It's really hard to say, but the point is, I am a TikTok girly. And because of that, I came upon this case because I saw this TikTok, followed by these headlines. And I was like, oh, I'm going to need to be doing some reading post haste. And now here we find ourselves. So today I'm going to tell you the entire story. I read all the things so that you do not have to. And at the end of this video, I'm going to ask you the question of the day. I'm going to give it to you now so you can have it kicking around in your brain as we go through the details of this case. But of course, I want you to answer once we have something to go on. But the question of the day is this. Well, there are two. One, what do you believe was the motive for the murder of Nick Abraham? And two, how do you believe that he and Mr. Prada allegedly knew each other? It's allegedly because it just happened and he hasn't gone to trial, and everybody is innocent until proven guilty, but he has been arrested. So how do you believe the two know each other? Let me know all your thoughts in the comments below after we go through the details of this case. And now with all of that said, come gather around and let me tell you the story of the murder of Nick Abraham at the hands, allegedly, of famous TikToker, Mr. Prada. So our case today is going to begin on September 29th, 2024. Again, as I said, very recent, and we are in Louisiana. It was on this day, in this place, it was a Sunday, it's about 8 a.m. when somebody is driving down the road, minding their own business, chilling, not killing, when they see something very unchill on the side of the road, okay? And what they see is a rolled up tarp. And it wasn't just the fact that they saw a rolled up tarp on the side of the road that made it suspicious, because that's already suspicious, but it's where it was found that also made it not look so good. And that is because it was found rolled up on the side of Highway 51 between Fluker and the valley of, help me out here, Tangipahoa. Locals, please help. But this area is near the state's southeast border. Now, a tarp rolled up on the side of the highway, bad news, right? I mean, not always, but typically when you see something like that, I don't know about you, the first thought that goes through my head is body. Tarp, body. Trash bags, body. That's always what I'm thinking. And it seemed that police were suspicious about this as well, because as soon as they got the call, they went to this area and they see the tarp. And it's on the side of the highway, and it looked like it had just been dumped out of maybe not a moving vehicle, but clearly it was something that had just been dumped there by somebody who had been driving on the highway, because it was kind of hidden. It was partially in the woods and partially not in the woods. The point is, it didn't look good. Let's just say that. And it didn't take them long to know that they were correct in feeling like this might be a suspicious situation, because they took some scissors. I don't know what they used, but what they did is they cut open this tarp. And once they cut it open, they found the body of a dead man. Okay. And they were able to see that this body was wrapped up in a gray comforter, and it had been taped, he'd been taped up in the comforter with dark duct tape. And around the head of the body, there was a dark colored towel. Now, once they were able to, look at the body more fully, because again, he's wrapped up in a comforter, he's wrapped up in a towel. Once they were able to remove those things and actually look at the body, they were able to see that whoever this was had taken a pretty substantial beating, because he had evidence of blunt force trauma to his head, his neck, and his shoulders. Within a very short amount of time, police were able to determine that the body that was found wrapped up in the tarp on the side of the highway in Louisiana was that of 69-year-old William Nicholas Abraham, a mental health therapist from Baton Rouge who went by Nick, not William, so that's what I'm going to call him throughout this video. And after figuring out who he was, a lot of things happened. They figured out who he was. They figured out that his car was stolen, likely by the person who killed him. They located the car, they went on a police chase, there was a whole bunch of drama. And at the end of this, they were able to apprehend their suspect, the person they believe is responsible for Nick's death. And this was a man named Terryon Ishmael Thomas, who is better known as Mr. Prada online to his 8 million followers. So Mr. Prada, who was born February 28, 2004. And if you're my age, you might hear that date and be like, oh, so an infant. No, that's a 20-year-old. But anyways, though being very popular on TikTok, he never came upon my For You page. He wasn't somebody I was familiar with. I don't think I'm his demographic, his age demographic, frankly. But anyways, he was very popular on TikTok. I guess he did like comedic and relatable videos, but there was a little bit of controversy with him because I guess the way he became popular is he would steal other people's videos, which shade first off. But in articles that I read, it said that he would literally copy other creators' videos like shot for shot. But because he was more popular, they'd get more traction, which brought him more people, which made him even more popular. And when people would call him out on this, he did not care at all. I missed it because, again, he wasn't somebody who was on my radar. But apparently there was a period of time where a bunch of creators were coming out and like calling him out and exposing him for stealing all their content. And he made a video where he was just basically like, I don't give a fuck. Like that video is deleted now, but he did make it which was acknowledging, and it was just like a whole thing. But anyways, apparently he started getting big around late 2022 and he made several different accounts and they each just started to grow. They started to grow, but his two main accounts gave him a combined 8.2 million followers and like 550 million likes across his videos, which are numbers that I truly cannot even fathom with like my baby little YouTube channel. It completely blows my mind. But let's put that into a little bit of perspective here. That's a lot of people who followed him and watched his videos. And I'm sure a great number of those people felt like they knew him. And even if you're not really a TikTok person, you are a person who consumes some people's media, right? Like you're on YouTube, you're watching me right now. Some of you watch me every week, which thank you for that. That's very sweet. But just put that into perspective in your brain. There are these people who watch him all the time and then see that he did something like this. It's so crazy to think about. And I guess for some people, it wasn't that much of a surprise because some people had followed him for a long time, knew all of his lore, so to speak, and could see that he was going through something. Apparently, he had been acting more and more strange. He was acting more erratically in his more recent uploads, or at least the uploads that were leading up to the murder. Like he posted about how he was bipolar and he was having trouble trying to hide it, that before he had tried to hide it and it was starting to get more difficult to manage. And like, for example, one of the more erratic videos that he posted a video at TikTok, and I did see this one, where he had braids, right? Or twists. I don't know the name of the hairstyle. Please forgive me. I guess that I am not Mark and nobody is rocking with me. But wait, he had like a longer hairstyle. Okay. He comes on TikTok and he just starts shaving these like braids or twists off. And he does it in a way that's like, it doesn't look like he was trying to make it look good. Okay. He's leaving like clumps of hair. It's pretty messy. And I mean, maybe he just wanted to change, but seeing as where we are now and what he's going through, it seems like maybe he was going through something. I don't know. It was a look. It wasn't a look that I would go for, but it was a look, and it was a look he was rocking. Okay. And then he made a video after that where he like shaved off his eyebrows. So he was changing himself physically drastically. And then he was making videos where he was just saying strange things. Like, for example, he said, quote, "Life is a mess. I cannot believe this is my reality right now. My life is hell. My life is a prison. Get me the fuck out." And then, you know, we also have the TikTok that he made that brought my attention to this case in the first place, where he was posting about practicing to take his mugshot because he was going to send somebody to God, right? And obviously that TikTok was meant to be a joke. It was posted more than a year ago at this point, but now seeing where we are, it makes it feel like less of a joke. And those two weren't the only concerning posts that he made, right? He also made a TikTok where he said that like he woke up in the morning, looked at the ceiling and just started screaming. And he also made a TikTok where he said, quote, "When you've gone a little too long without getting in trouble and you feel a canon event approaching." And then a week before this case broke, he posted a YouTube video, and the video was titled, "What I Do After a Breakup." And in the video, he like smeared eyeliner all over his face while singing and ripping his shirt off. And something that's interesting, because you might see this and be like, well, that's just like the kind of thing that he makes. Like he's just like a little bit of a quirky dude, but that didn't seem to be the case, because somebody who seemingly had watched him for a while commented on these videos. I believe it was the the breakup video specifically, saying, quote, "It's crazy. We see people go slowly insane every day and people never seem to notice until they snap. This dude needed fucking help. And as the internet always do, they laughed at it until he snapped." Which I found this quote to be particularly interesting because if you look at his content, it does seem like he was clearly going through something. And there were a number of people who did seem to recognize that and were concerned at his changing behavior. But there was a vast number of people who also just saw it as entertainment. And I feel like this is so common, right? We see people post totally unhinged things on the internet. We give it a little chuckle and we go, that's weird. And we move on with our day. Like, for example, look at that avocado gentleman. Like, what is he doing? It's all very strange. And in this case, it's just very upsetting, right? It's upsetting to look back, see this all happening, and know that nothing was done to help. It's just scary because you think, like, could this have been avoided if somebody said something? But when is the right time to say something, and whose responsibility is it to actually do something about it at that point? It seems like a really gray area, and it seems like a question that there is no real answer for. And it's just unfortunate that because of all of this, somebody lost their life. And that person was 69-year-old Nick Abraham. So Nick was born on December 28th, 1954 in Clarksdale, Mississippi, and he was one of 8 kids, my God, his poor mother, with 4 brothers and 3 sisters. And he was born to parents Tommy and Sue. So it was a big, big family, right? He even had 11 nieces and nephews and 6 great nieces and great nephews. Now, I can't say what Nick's home life was like because, again, this is a new case that information hasn't been released. And there's going to be a lot of information about Nick that'll never be released, right? Because you can never know a person without actually knowing a person. But I will tell you the bit of information I was able to find out. Like, for example, I know that Nick loved music and that he got his love of music from his father, who was still performing up into his 80s. When he was young, his family called him Little Nicky, and they still called him Nicky in his adult life. But when he was younger, he loved seeing his dad perform. He would stand on a chair to reach the microphone because he was too, small, because he was a little kid to reach. And he would sway and he would dance. And as he got older, his love of music never died. And with his father's push, he continued with music, first starting a jazz band called Trace, where he would perform wherever he could, right? Like restaurants, clubs, dance clubs, etc., etc. He attended and graduated from Clarksdale High School before going on to several colleges. This man was incredibly educated. He went to St. Ben Seminary, the University of Southern Mississippi, Indiana University, Sacred Heart School of Theology, Marquette University, and Concordia International University. So educated, right? Because he got his master's in theology, a PhD in counseling, and a business administration degree. And honestly, there's probably even more, but that's what I got for you to tell you about today. So very educated, many, many degrees. And he used all of this education, all of these degrees to work in counseling for a very broad description. He worked with the Department of Defense as a military family life consultant for a few years, where he would provide short-term and solution-focused counseling to military families during the Iraq War. And from there, he returned to Baton Rouge and opened up his own practice. But before all of that, he actually did more work in music, starting in 1996 when he became the director of music ministry at Most Blessed Sacrament Catholic Church, where he worked with the adults who sang and played instruments, and also the, quote, best children's choirs in Baton Rouge. So music was just like in this man, and it stayed in him even after he left the church. I guess he worked at the church or with the church. I don't think it wasn't one church. He worked within the church for over a decade. I believe it was 14 years. And he worked in areas of Mississippi and Milwaukee. And all the while that he was doing work with the church, he was also doing side work with music as well. He started another band in his later years with a, quote, standards jazz sound, something he and his father loved. And they were called the Nick Abraham Experience. And apparently he was considered, quote, one of the great charismatic singers of Baton Rouge. And if you want, you can actually hear some of his music from his website. Like, it's posted on his website, and I will try to remember to link it. I have the link written down, and I did listen to it, and you can listen to it too if you want. Check the description box. And if I didn't put it there, give me a comment and be like, Pitch, you didn't put it, and I will put it. So a man of music, right? Like, that is what I'm trying to demonstrate to you here, that's something that drove this man and something that he really loved. And he would use music as a tool, right, for his counseling and with his speaking engagements, because that's something that he did as well. He would appear on this TV show. I think it was a local show. He would do it every weekend. It was called Weekends with Whitney, I believe. And he would go on and talk about various topics like how to be an optimistic person and how to live an optimistic life, because that's something that he strove for or strived for. That's something that he found to be very, very important for himself and something that he wanted to help others to achieve as well. And, he did this through many avenues, whether it be his music, his speaking engagements, his book, because he wrote a few books, his work as a life coach, or his work as a mental health counselor. Reportedly, he had over 30 years of experience helping people with a variety of issues, from substance abuse disorder to anxiety, depression. He also worked closely with the LGBTQ plus community and helped people who were having sexual identity crises. And he was said to be the type of person who just made a mark in people's lives and helped make their lives better. But that's not to say that every single thing that you read or hear about Nick Abraham is going to be positive, because he did have something in his history. And I believe that this particular thing in his history is part of what made this case become so sensational. Besides the fact that a famous influencer is the person who was arrested for allegedly committing the murder, I think part of Nick's history added fuel to that fire. And that's because people went online and people were able to dig into Nick's past, and they found that he was once arrested for inappropriately touching an 11-year-old boy during a counseling session. Now, when this happened, Nick denied that the contact was inappropriate. He said that he simply sat down next to the boy and put his arm around him, which is that common in a therapy session? I really don't know. I haven't had in-person therapy in quite some time, and I don't remember, because I did do therapy as a child, and I don't remember what the situation was there. But that is what he said. Now, the kid was said to have really been affected by whatever happened, and said that because of it, he never wanted to see Dr. Nick again, and actually did switch counselors and ended up going with a new counselor, and ended up telling this new counselor about what happened with Nick, which is how, the ball got rolling here. Now, this whole topic, very uncomfortable for me, right? It's a sticky situation to be in, because I never, ever want to be somebody who victim shames, victim blames, victim bashes, right? If you watch my videos, you know that that's not really my bag, baby. However, these are pretty serious allegations, and people who are gross to kids are the fucking, I can't even express how low that is and how I feel, right? I'm not even going to get into it. So it's just a sticky situation to be in. Now, the problem is that this too is a gray area, because this wasn't a recent thing or anything like that, right? This happened in 2015. He was arrested and he was held on a $25,000 bond, and he did post that bond, which meant that he was able to, go home and be free while awaiting trial. But the trial never came. The prosecutors in this case decided not to go through with formal charges, and therefore he was arrested, but he was never there's nothing on his record. It's clean. Now, obviously, because people found out about it, people were enraged about it, and people started asking questions. So the DA at the time, the East Baton Rouge DA, had to come out with a statement explaining their decision for not moving forward with these charges. And they said, quote, "While there was probable cause for an arrest, my office had to determine if the evidence supported our burden of proof at trial, which is proof beyond a reasonable doubt. The matter was under review by my office for approximately 2 years. After considering all available evidence, the best interest of the child, and the lack of inculpatory, statements by the arrestee, we declined to institute formal charges." So that's that on that. But because people learned about Nick's past after he was murdered, rumors and speculation started to swirl that it may be possible that the victim, the alleged victim in this case from 2015, was Terryon, and that this murder was some sort of revenge situation, right? The internet loves to internet, but they have come out and made it very clear. They were listen, Terryon, Mr. Prada, if you're nasty, is absolutely in no way related to that 2015 case, which is exactly why you have to be so careful what you say on the internet, because you can really not know a situation unless you're involved in it, right? It's just like the Brittanee Drexel case. It's the example I use every single time I talk about how you have to be careful with these cases that are not yet solved while discussing them on the internet, which, if you are unfamiliar with that case, basically what happened there is on April 25th, 2009, 17-year-old Brittanee Drexel disappeared while visiting Myrtle Beach in South Carolina. Now, This is a complicated case, so I'm not going to get all into it here. Maybe I'll do a video on it one day, we'll see. But when Brittanee disappeared, no one knew what happened, not for a long time. But there was one particular person that the public at large believed was responsible, okay? And any YouTube video or podcast you watched on this case before it was solved mentioned this person and talked about all the ways in which they were suspicious, and a likely suspect. English is not, one second. My English wasn't Englishing, okay? But that went on for years, okay? People speculating about this person for years because this case wasn't solved until like 2022. Okay, for years, this guy was suspected. People talked about him. People said that it was likely that he was the person responsible. And I'm not even going to mention this guy's name because, spoiler alert, he didn't do it. In May of 2022, police arrested a totally different guy. This was Raymond Moody, a registered sex offender in that area, and he was charged with Brittanee's murder, and he pled guilty to her murder. Now listen, in hearing this case, because I was very familiar with it when it was happening, I thought about covering it then. I'm so glad I did not because of the information that was out there. But when I heard about the case, I could totally see why people thought this guy was suspicious, but he didn't do it, and now his reputation is fucked forever. All of that is to say, you need to be very careful with what you say online, especially if you have any sort of following, which this whole situation, not this situation, but this premise is part of the reason that I don't often cover unsolved cases. Okay. But anyways, motive, right? The motive for this murder wasn't the fact that this was some revenge murder because of Mr. Abraham and Terryon having a history that links to the 2015 case. And as of right now, the motive for why this happened is still unknown, which is scary, right? No motive is scarier. See, it's a lot scarier when there's no motive. Scream. But no, there was no motive here. And that is concerning because this was a violent attack. Like the sheriff in that area, in the Tangipahoa area, his name was Gerald Sticker. He said that it was particularly violent and said specifically, quote, "It was a very physical scene, for a lack of better words. There was a lot of blunt force trauma and a lot of injury to this individual." So let's talk about what happened and let's talk about what we know. We know that Nick Abraham's body was found wrapped up in a tarp in an area that was miles away from where he worked and where he lived, an area that he has seemingly no connection to. And we know that his cause of death was blunt force trauma and his manner of death was homicide. When police first started looking into this case in the early reports, they also said that they didn't know where the murder happened, though that has changed a little bit since. But they said they weren't sure where the murder happened, that they had searched Dr. Nick's apartment, and they had found no evidence that any sort of crime had taken place there. And they also didn't believe that it took place at where his body was found, because this didn't seem like the site of a murder. It just seemed like a convenient dump site. The last place that people believed he had been, but there has since been more information that has come out, right? But where they believed he had last been was at his office, because he told his roommate that he was going to go clean his car and then do some paperwork at his office on Saturday, but he never came back after that. So the body was found Sunday, and the Monday after his body was found, so the next day, it was reported that this was, in fact, the body of Nick Abraham. And that same day, his vehicle, his SUV, was spotted, I believe it was in Louisiana. And at the time, they didn't know it was his vehicle. It was just like a vehicle, an SUV that was driving around Louisiana. And for whatever reason, they looked up the license plate and they found that the vehicle was reported stolen. Now, it was reported stolen because after Nick's body was found, they realized that his car was gone, so it was put into the system as stolen. And they were also able to determine that after the body was found, his vehicle was caught by police technology at a shopping center in Denham, Louisiana. And they're like, oh, well, this obviously wasn't Nick because his body was found at this point. So somebody else is driving this car. This person could be related to the murder. They were able to see on this, quote, law enforcement technology that the person of interest got out of the car and went into a business called Jubin Crossing. And from there, they got the still images that were later released to the media. But once they were able to see that his car was stolen, that somebody was driving it, they released a bolo out on the vehicle so that people could be out on the lookout to try to find this car. And find this car they did. So the day after Nick's body was found, an officer saw his SUV just driving around as a vehicle does. And it was found driving around in the 4300 block of North Shorewood Forest Boulevard, which was about 50 miles from where the body was found. And at about 12:20 p.m., the officer tried to pull the car over. Now, according to the arrest warrant, the car did pull over at one point, but when the officer got out of his vehicle to approach the SUV, the driver of the SUV said, "Fuck that noise," and went in reverse, slamming into the police car before driving off. But he only took off a little bit. I guess he pulled between two buildings and then got out and booked it, taking off on foot. Now, police were able to determine after the fact that after this attempted stop, right, the suspect who was driving the vehicle, which was allegedly, gets out and is able to get a ride from the area of Sherwood Forest to his apartment, which was on Manusco Street or Manusco Avenue, Manusco, in Baton Rouge. He goes to his apartment and then he flees the state. And if you're wondering who picked him up, police were able to figure out that the person who picked him up was a family member who had no idea what was going on. They just thought they were giving their family member a ride to their apartment. Now, after all this happened, those photos of the person of interest that were taken from Jubin Crossing, which, what is this place? That name is just so interesting. One second. I'm so stupid. Turns out Jubin Crossing is not a store. It's the name of like a shopping center. But anyways, after they got these photos from the shopping center, so we entered a store in the shopping center, and that's where they got the photos from. They released these photos to the media saying like, "Hey, everyone, we're looking for this man. Have you seen this man? And if you could please look out for him. He's wanted as a person of interest in relation to the murder of Dr. Nick Abraham. And if you see him, please make sure to holla at your boy." And by holla at your boy, I mean call the police. Now, as soon as these photos were released, people recognized him right away. And they recognized him as Mr. Prada, the famous TikToker, because hello, he had 8 million followers. And therefore, a lot of people recognized his face. And that's why everybody was talking about this case on TikTok. Not really on YouTube, though. I looked it up, not really on YouTube, which is where I come in. Wait, what was I talking about? I don't know. I was talking about the fact that everybody recognized him as Mr. Prada from TikTok. And then in addition to everybody recognizing him from that, his own family recognized him from the photos that were taken because, hello, they know what he looks like. So the same family member who actually picked him up and drove him to his apartment contacted the police and were able to give them the name of Terryon. Oh my God. They were able to give him his name because they had a real identification and not just Mr. Prada. And with this identification, police were able to track Terryon down. And I think it's possible that the family member might have known where he had gone and given this information to police, though I guess they could have gotten it from somebody else. But let me explain why I think that. I think that because by the following Tuesday, police 400 miles away in Texas were able to track Terryon down to that location. And that happened after the U.S. Marshals received a call saying that he may be there. The tip came from Louisiana, and they said that he had bought a bus ticket to travel to Texas. So I guess maybe nobody told them he went there, and they got this information from his debit card transactions. That is also an option. Anyways, members of the North Texas Fugitive Task Force searched the downtown area and found Terryon, Mr. Prada, just sitting there on a bench. And so, they approached him and arrested him without any notable incident. And when he was initially arrested, it was just for allegedly having stolen a vehicle, running from police, and property damage because he hit that cop car. But then shortly thereafter, he was charged with second-degree murder and held without bond. Which second-degree murder I found to be very interesting. I thought that was an interesting choice. I'm wondering if that will change. I'm actually going to check and see if that has changed because, again, it's a new case. And I looked into it yesterday. Like I got all my information yesterday's, and 24 hours can make a difference. There's a hair stuck to my phone. Cats, babies, Jesus. Wait, Mr. Prada. Wait just a minute. You just wait just a minute. 1 second there. Terryon Thomas, also known as Mr. Prada, has had his charges upgraded from second-degree murder to first-degree murder under a Louisiana law that allows the more serious charge when, quote, the offender has the specific intent to kill or inflict great bodily harm upon a victim who is under the age of 12 or over the age of 65. Okay. And, this new charge makes the case eligible for the death penalty if he's convicted. So, I was wondering about that second degree murder charges, and it looks like it's been upgraded to first degree, which is more serious. Now moving on. Even though he was arrested in Texas, it has been reported that he is more than likely going to be sent back to Baton Rouge to, be prosecuted there, because that's where the murder was taking place. And right now he is in a jail, not a prison, a jail in Texas, awaiting, like an extradition hearing so that he can be sent back. But that date has not been set yet. But that doesn't mean that people are just sitting on their laurels or sitting on their butts or whatever. I think laurels are butts, right? I look up everything else, but I'm not going to look that up. I'm just going to let you tell me if I'm right. They're not just sitting, chilling, and relaxing, not killing and not relaxing. They are looking into the case and getting more information, and they have been able to find several things to link Terryon to Nick's murder. For example, we already know they have him driving Nick's car after Nick was killed. We also already know that he was, well, you don't know this yet, I know this. He was picked out of a photo lineup by the cop who pulled him over driving Nick's car. So that's how we know it was actually him driving Nick's car. They were also able to get video footage that showed that the day before Nick's body was found, Nick, showed up at the apartment complex where Terryon lived. Now, was he going there to see him? Was he going there to see somebody else? Do they even know each other? These are the questions that I have, because we don't have answers to that. They have confirmed that Terryon was not a client of Nick's, like he didn't go to him for counseling. And right now, the relationship between the two is being looked into. They don't know yet how the two know each other, or if they even know each other. But the day before he was killed, this would have been September 28th at 11 a.m., he is seen entering the apartment complex where Terryon lived, and he was wearing the same clothes that he would later be wearing when his body was found. What's happening outside? Why are you so loud? Stop it. But anyways, that was the last time that Nick was seen alive. Hours later, Terryon is seen leaving his home, and he is dragging a large, heavy tarp with him. And he is seen struggling under the weight of this tarp. He takes the tarp and then he puts it in the back of a vehicle and he leaves. And it's believed that this tarp was containing Nick's body and that it was placed into Nick's vehicle, and that Terryon then drove down the highway and dumped him on the side of the road. Now, his apartment was searched, Terryon's, and they were able to find a great deal of evidence that showed that a violent interaction, a violent altercation took place in that apartment, which, would make sense considering we know that Nick was bludgeoned, right? He had been beaten in the head, the neck, the head. He was covered in bruises. So naturally, when they searched Terryon's apartment, they found blood all over the place. And they also found multiple, various sharp objects or weapons in the house. The house, the apartment, the home. They also noted that it appears somebody had tried and failed at cleaning the apartment in an attempt to get rid of evidence. Now, crime scene techs did take swabs of this blood for DNA, and they were sent to the state crime lab, and they were tested, and they did come back as a match for Nick. So he's picked out of a lineup for driving Nick's car. Nick's seen going to that apartment complex, and his blood is all over Terryon's apartment. So that doesn't look good for him. Now, as I'm sure you can imagine, people were shocked to hear what happened to Nick, particularly the people who knew him well. Like his friend / former attorney said that he was completely taken aback to hear that Nick was killed, and killed in such a violent way, because he said that he was just a gentle and loving and sensitive man who had a, quote, servant's heart. And he said specifically, quote, "No one deserves to die this way, but I would have never expected someone of his disposition to have been violently murdered." He also had a theory for why he believes Nick might have been murdered. He wonders if Nick hadn't been set up to be killed because he was openly gay. And we do know that historically that has been reason enough for a certain type of person to believe that Nick's life has less value. But we know that's not a reason for somebody to have less value. And I know that a lot of people valued Nick, and a lot of people came out and spoke about how much they valued him after he was gone. A friend of his who was a Louisiana public broadcasting anchor, his name was Michael Andre Moreau, maybe. He shared a post on Facebook where he remembered Nick saying, quote, "Through a series of phone calls among true friends today came the news we all could not bear to hear or believe, that a good man was taken from us. I remember his light. It's unmistakable, and it remains," which is a beautiful sentence. And then you have to remember, this guy was a therapist, okay? So he touched several people's lives all the time. every day, and several of his clients spoke out about his death as well. One woman said, quote, "Dr. Nick Abraham was a light, a wonderful therapist who went that extra step and reached out to his clients beyond appointments and really truly loved, cared, and shared the light of God. I'll miss him and I pray for his dear friends and family. Thank you for all you gave me." And then another client said, quote, "This world we live in is so cruel. I am in disbelief to hear that my therapist was murdered. To whoever you are, I hope they find you." And, that was clearly before they found him. And the him that they found was 20-year-old Terryon Ishmael Thomas. And it's like, he was a kid, or he's a man, he's 20. He looks like a child. He was a man that people described as, like people who knew him in person. There was a neighbor who came out that just said he was quiet and unassuming and kind. But this quiet, unassuming, kind person allegedly violently murdered a 69-year-old man. And why? I watched an episode of Law and Crime Sidebar on this case, which I have referenced that before, and I will reference it again because they often have experts who appear on these cases to discuss cases, right? Who obviously just have more information than I ever will because of their professions, right? And in the interview I watched regarding this case, they had a licensed social worker / trauma expert / author of a book called Stolen Childhoods, Thriving After Abuse. And her name was Shari Botwin. And she talked a little bit about the dichotomy between who Terryon seemed to be online and who he clearly was behind the scene, with all things considered here. She wondered if him creating his TikTok account was maybe a way for him to try to connect, a way to try to channel a version of himself, to present a specific version of himself that was happy and content and upbeat so that he could connect to people who were like that, because in his normal day-to-day life, that was difficult for him. She also wondered if maybe the life of an influencer was too much for him because the expectations that he put on himself because of the expectations he felt that other people put on him became too heavy because, one, he's very young, he's 20 years old, and two, he allegedly struggled with mental health. She just wondered if maybe this could have exacerbated any and all insecurities he already had within himself and got it to a point that it was too much, because for some people it can be, and it boils over. And for anybody who doesn't have a presence online, it can be hard to kind of relate to that, I believe. But the way you have to look at it is like in your job, if someone's shitty to you, like to your face, they call you like a stupid fucking bitch, right? Because I've been called that when I worked at a more conventional job. You go home and you can try to shake that off. It might ruin your day, but it obviously for most people doesn't happen every day, right? You don't hear shitty things about yourself every day, multiple times a day, and you can leave and it's over. But when you do this sort of work that he did, I'm assuming it was work for him because of how many followers he had, you make money doing things like that. You hear that stuff every day, all day, if you read comments, and it never turns off. And it's not very natural for a person to hear criticism about themselves all day. And there's a difference between somebody being mad at you for your work when you are not your work. Like you work at Subway. Somebody's pissed off. They're pissed off at Subway. When you're making your own content, they're pissed off at you. Your work is you. You suck. Right? So I can see how that could be difficult. Not an excuse at all. An explanation to what they're saying there for context, because I do this. I read people being shitty every single day, and it affects certain people differently. I'm also much older, and I know the way I deal with it is assuming that anyone who leaves like a shitty comment is just like 12 years old, because I believe that adults don't act that way. I know they do, but the way I rationalize it in my head is, wow, who let this 12-year-old on the internet? Because why would anyone who's not 12 say things like this with their chests? You know what I mean? But anyway, she also wonders, like, even if that's the case, how does that relate to this therapist? Because of the fact that we don't know the relationship. We know that he wasn't his therapist, but like, how do the two know each other? How did their worlds collide? And, I'm very curious about that too. I know we're going to get information on that at some point. The police have released a statement that they are doing forensic investigations on all of the electronic devices linked between the two of them, or that belong to the two of them. And from there, they should be able to see if there was a link between the two of them and see how they knew each other, be able to answer the question of how they knew each other, and then hopefully answer the question of why this happened. Though I don't know if answering the question of why this happened is really going to be much help to Nick's family. because, he's still gone, right? They had to bury him in the ground the first week of October of 2024, and he's never coming back. And they are heartbroken about that. He did seem to be pretty close with several of his siblings, because remember, he's from a big family. It's been mostly two of his brothers that have been the most outspoken when it comes to this case. But from looking at his Facebook, his online presence, I could see that he was also very close with one of his sisters. They had several recent photos out doing things together, like getting meals and like being friends in addition to being siblings. The brothers have said that they were just shocked to receive the news, and they just want to know why did this happen? They said that they watch the news all the time and they see these stories about people being murdered and people being hurt, but they could never imagine this happening to them, and they could never imagine this happening to Nikki. They said that no one should be able to take a life like this, nobody but God. They seem to be a religious family, that nobody but God should be able to take a life like this, and that anybody who does is a coward. And they said they're just particularly shocked that it happened to Nick. They said that he was just the best, that he was a big ham and had a big personality, and that every day you got a new version of him, and that he was just dedicated to trying to help people. They said that they've just been left blinded by this, but that they will get their answers. But for now, they're just stuck asking questions, right? Asking questions like, why did this happen? Why do things like this happen? And I think the sheriff on this case handled it best, or answered that question best, about why things like this happen, when he said, quote, "This is the society that we live in. There is an element of violence. There are evil people in this world." And with that, my friends, is the story of the murder of Nick Abraham so far. I hope you found my telling to be informative. I hope I gave you all the information you would want when looking into this case. And of course, I just want to thank you for hanging out or remembering Nick with me today. Now, considering everything I told you throughout this video, I want to revisit the questions of the day. I had two, and they were these. These are them, as follows. 1, what do you believe was the motive for the murder of Nick Abraham? And 2, do you think that these two even knew each other? Or do you think this was a random act of violence? Let me know all your thoughts in the comments below, because I'm curious to hear what you think. It's just such a messed up case. It's one of those ones that as soon as I heard about it, as soon as I saw it on TikTok, I just was like, what the fuck? What happened here? And as I continued reading about it, I was just like, what am I reading? How do things like this just happen? It's always jarring when somebody loses their life in a violent way, right? But then there's this added element when it's this type of case where the person's a public figure. I always find that to be particularly jarring, because it's this is a person that a lot of people knew. It's a person who presented themselves as a certain person online and created content and had people following them, and had his audience as kids, right? Had young people looking up to him and caring about him. And he had so many followers and presumably made a good amount of money. I don't know how people make money on TikTok. That is not something that I do, but I know that people do, and I know that they can make a lot. And it just seems like he, with being so young and being so successful, had a lot to want to be free for. But, instead he was arrested for doing this. And it's just a shame. And I feel so bad for Nick's family, right? And obviously for Nick. And it's just, to look at him and to read about him, especially on his website, there's a lot of information about him. It seems like he's the kind of guy that loved life and he lived, right? He didn't just exist. And so it's just an all-around shame. But anyways, guys, before you leave, please don't forget to leave me a comment down below with whatever case you'd like to see me cover in the future. As you know, I have a long list of cases, and whenever you leave me a suggestion, I put it on my list with your name next to it, so I cover it. So if I cover it, I can give you a shout out. I love looking into the cases you guys suggest, because they're often cases I haven't heard of or cases that need more coverage. And I know you're filled with great ideas and great taste, otherwise you would not be here. If you haven't already, please don't forget to join the Brat Pack by subscribing. I can't speak today. Please don't forget to join the Brat Pack by subscribing and ringing that bell. I put out a new video every single week, sometimes 2 a week, and I would love to hang out with you. Yes, you, specifically you, but I can only do that if you join the Brat Pack. Become one of us. One of us. And if you want to hang out more consistently, all my social media is listed down below, along with a link to my membership and a link to my merch store. And now with all that said, I just want to thank you for being here when you could literally be anywhere else in the world. That is tight. You are tight. Please stay safe and be a better person than you were yesterday. And I hope to see you in my next video.